It's an appropriate place for me to chime in here. My name's Adam Black. I run a startup called Key Wi-Fi, and as Dana and some other people here know, we are very interested in the other side of this argument, which hasn't been opened up here, which is redistribution. The reality is that this conversation is basic, from my ears anyway, is basically there's going to be lots more traffic, so we need lots more ways of delivering that traffic. And we're having a conversation here about how we're slicing up this cake, because everybody's on mobiles and everybody's going to be watching TV on mobiles 24/7. And what has happened is there is we've got to provide the same broadband in a home or in an office to people on the move. And therefore we need more, and we need more investment, and we need more charges. And chances are everybody in this room is most probably paying one way or another about 4 times for their broadband. They're paying at home, $40. They're paying for their mobile, another $30. They're paying as part of their work contribution, and who knows, maybe they've got one of the cameras at $8, maybe their kid's got a PlayStation. So altogether, $150, right? The reality is that, like Dana said, just about everywhere you go, you will find a Wi-Fi connection. And that may be owned by somebody else. It may be a fiber, it may be through a $10,000 or $250,000 box, it may be through a satellite connection, maybe through anything. The point is the networks themselves are not being run efficiently or managed efficiently. And everybody is, lots of people are being overcharged in multiple places to support fundamentally inefficient methodologies. For example, 40 or 50% of the bandwidth of data traffic on mobile phones could be going this second, don't need any new technology, could be delivered through Wi-Fi, because everybody with those mobile phones has Wi-Fi in their phone and is standing next to a Wi-Fi hotspot. The only thing that's missing is they don't have the password to that hotspot. And by the way, everybody, that's what we're doing. So, seriously, there is a question here. The question is, can the panel discuss for a little minute the opportunity of the redistribution as opposed to just more technology and different technology? Because I think there's a big elephant in the room, and it's called redistribution of service.
Yes, but you're absolutely right. And depending on the carrier, what you hear is that you've got between 20 and 40% of current cellular traffic that could be offloaded to Wi-Fi in one form or another. Having said that, it doesn't solve the other 60 to 80%, which in volume terms is going to grow 50-fold in the next 5-6 years. So the answer is yes and no.
I'll take the yes for the first 3 years.
Just building on that, because that's a very important point from a network's perspective. Most of the broadband, see the traffic is coming from 3 areas, primarily from video. Video is the main culprit here. Then you have, the social networking and the games. If you see that the way the networks were designed earlier, the peak hour and peak traffic zones. In fact, this problem is going to become much more complex now because of video. Because the person who's using video, let's say, in a stock exchange, and he goes back home, he takes that traffic away, and the spikes are going to be far bigger. So there is a trend in the industry towards what we call self-optimizing networks. So you will see that on the cellular side, networks, there is focus to bring more intelligence into the networks and dynamically adjust the networks. I think we still have some time to reach that point, but there is clear recognition of that fact.
Yeah, I think the redistribution in the near term is a good short-term solution for some of these issues. But as most people who talk to me at conferences and whatnot are surprised to hear, the Wi-Fi guy is probably the loudest proponent of just stopping the discussion and just building out as much fiber distribution as we can get throughout the country. There is no other solution. Wireless is great. It's going to be in the near term supplemental, and you'll be able to supplement it more and more. And there's some types of wireless that will offload from other types of wireless and from landline congestion. But the truth of the matter is, and the thing that this country is inexplicably fearful of admitting, is that the only long-term solution to bandwidth problems is to have an advanced fiber network permeating the entirety of the country. That doesn't mean that 100% of every square foot is covered, but rather that in line with 95% of the population density, that we build fiber out to each individual homeowner and each individual residence. And with that in place, then we can talk about some real offloading that might happen and some real network optimization that might happen, where Verizon actually may have a contract with a lot of other individual network operators, or community networks, or whatever they are, to have carriage of, to use 10% of the landline carriage wherever they are to do Wi-Fi offloading. And now all of a sudden, with sufficient for the future bandwidth of fiber throughout this country, then all of a sudden we won't have the sort of issues that we're dealing with right now. But everything that's talked about in the industry as solutions is just patches onto the problem.
Does anyone know where the investment would come from for this fiber network?
I've seen numbers where the entirety of the country could be covered for under $100 billion.
So we just raised funds for a company called Allied Fiber, which is exactly doing that. And it basically is doing the middle mile fiber, which was brought up in the conversation, from Chicago to New York to Ashburn, Virginia, and Ashburn because that's a huge data centers there. And the whole rationale there is not only is it the latest grid of fiber, it's also the fiber which is built in the late 90s, when we know there was a glut of fiber, but not anymore, was fiber which was kind of a highway which you can't access. There's no on-off ramp in the middle. And the way the Allied Fiber is doing it, every 60 miles you can tap into the fiber, which is extremely critical for all this backhaul bottleneck issues. So, but you're absolutely right that the funding was one of the hardest we worked on, just because it is very hard to make the case to investors in spite of what the current numbers look like, because they gotten burned in the late 90s when there was a glut of fiber and everybody and their cousins had fiber under the ground. But thanks to video, it's not the case anymore.
So you have a revenue, obviously there's a revenue model for
There is, so
paying for all this.
Exactly. So you have to pre-sell the fiber before you lay the fiber. So it's a wholesale model as well. They're leasing dark fiber to all the carriers who actually need all this fiber. The proof lies in the pudding.
One of the interesting parts of that, as just the tail end of that conversation, is that some of the most advanced city deployments of fiber are community networks, like St. Cloud and Utopia in Utah, and there's a network in that's been run by Case Western Reserve University, and Lafayette County in Louisiana passed regulation that they're actually building out they're self-funding the fiber networks. And unlike some of the high visibility failures of Muni Wi-Fi, these networks are actually built and run not just inexpensively and affordably, but profitably as well. And I think that it's not the entirety of the solution to the funding problem, but it's part of the solution to the funding problem, which is to enable localities to self-fund and to build out these local fiber networks and let them interconnect with each other. And so you take, as opposed to trying to fund the entirety of the thing all at once, you fund little pieces of it along the way, and everybody chips in as they go.
You're waiting with the microphone.
Hi, I'm from the Internet Society. The Allied Fiber, it's very interesting. What's very interesting about Allied Fiber is that the model that they're on is it's just a real estate model. They build the fiber and anybody can get at it. They have open access, and I think that's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's as radical as if when the cable company put the cable into your house, you'd have a choice of what company you could connect to with it. And so just getting sort of more, Dana just sort of kind of answered my question, which was going to be a little bit about the role of government in providing, at the last mile. But following up on what he said earlier, I mean, about there being need for a backbone. I mean, at the moment we have a lot of toll roads, and is there a need for an Eisenhower kind of, national plan to build freeways across the country? Address.
That was my question. Thanks. Yes.
Actually, that's a very good analogy, because if you look at the broadband, it's exactly like a road. And if you look at the applications which run on it, they are like the vehicles which run on that road. People very often remember which car went on that road, but they forget that what's enabling that is the road. And the question is, how high is that toll? I think that's the fundamental question. If you have a toll route and you have to have, obviously you can't have it free. What level of toll you can put to build that?
Well, I will say, the MTA charges on the bridges to maintain other bits of, the infrastructure.
Just a comment on that. It's happening in other countries in the world. There are countries where fiber penetration for the last mile is much more advanced. Japan, South Korea, several European countries.
Netherlands.
Australia.
Cape Town, I think, has a rule
But-
that anyone who digs up the street has to put in fiber.
Yes, but
And the government's going to operate it.
yeah, so there are usually two ways for that to happen. Either it's government mandated, or the regulation is such that it prevents duplication of investment. So if you are the first one to connect a particular building, you need to unbundle to the other carriers. That's the system that has been implemented in several European countries. So either government mandated or regulated unbundling is a good catalyst for investment to come. Otherwise, it won't, because it's very hard to justify fiber investment in the last mile.